Hey, what up, Seekers? We have a special gift for you today. We are visiting the one and only, my favorite place in Jerusalem, and I have a lot of favorite contesting places, but this is the favoritist of all my favorite places. It is, you might have guessed it from the title, the National Library of Israel. We're here with Alyssa. Say hi. And I'm going to show you the best kept secret in Jerusalem. One room, which is, I don't even have the words to begin to describe this room and what it means to me and what it means to the research of mysticism in this country and of Jewish mysticism globally. But we're about to check it out. Come. Over here, we have some famous stained glass windows from Mordechai Ardon, the famous Israeli artist. Over here is the Ulam Kriya Klali, is the general reading room, with about 250,000 books on the shelves, out of about 5 million in the stacks total. Have a look. So we have to whisper because we're in the library, but this is the general reading room. Up here we have humanities, we have Islamic, Judaica, Hebraica. This is actually a double room, and it continues about the same distance on the other side, but this is not the room that we came to see. We came to see the Gershom Scholem reading room, which is right across. I think the full name is the Gershom Scholem Collection for the study of Kabbalah and Hasidism and Jewish mysticism. There's some longer name, but we're about to see it right here. And this, my friends, is a room which I spend hundreds of hours in researching, preparing for these videos that you hopefully love. So if you love the content, you love the research, you should love this room that we're about to go in. And I've been wanting to show you this room for a long time. They were shut down for Corona. They're back now in action. I'm friends with the head librarian of this room, Dr. Tzvi Lashem. And he hopefully is going to show us around this room. This is where Shalom's private library is kept. We're going to hear a lot more about that in a second. Follow me in. Hi, Dr. Leshem. How are you?
It's good to see you.
Nice to see you. Thank you for having us for the tour here at the library.
Thank you for coming.
It's an absolute pleasure. This is a room that I've been here. You know that I've been in this room for hundreds of hours. You can testify.
Yes,
It's
really
true.
Has. He comes here all the time.
There you go. And we have the great pleasure of meeting none other than the head librarian to show us around this incredible room. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Where should we begin?
I think we should begin with a picture of Scholem in his library at home. That's okay. In the editing, you can do whatever you want.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
The man himself.
Yeah, so here is our hero, Gershom Scholem, in his apartment not far from here, where he had wall-to-ceiling books in every room in the apartment, very few pictures. There's a story that he had, an apocryphal story perhaps, that he always had one empty shelf. And I've heard several explanations. One is that when his wife Fania would complain to him and say, Gershon, or she probably said, Gerhard, there's not room for another single book in this house, he would say, what are you talking about, dear? We have a whole
empty shelf.
Right? And another explanation was that when people would want to give him books, he'd say, I see you don't have room for any more books. He would also be able to say, I do have room for more books.
There's an empty shelf.
So Scholem got interested in Kabbalah when he was a teenager in Berlin around the period of World War I, even before World War I. And he decided at a very young age several things. One was that he wanted to amass a complete library of anything having to do with Jewish mysticism, because the only way to do proper historical philological research was to be able to open up all of the relevant texts and compare them. Secondly, that he was a Zionist and he was going to make Aliyah. And thirdly, that he wanted his library after his 120 years on this earth to become part of the National Library of Israel and form a major research center in Jewish studies, which is exactly what happened.
So that was the plan from all along.
So the plan from all along. In his diary, he writes about it as a very early decision, and we have correspondence that he wrote to other Jewish intellectuals in Europe already to encourage them to do the same, to try to give their books.
Incredible foresight.
That Scholem had a lot of foresight in that sense.
That's
He's
really
very
cool.
savvy.
That's really cool.
So Scholem started collecting this amazing library, and he even writes in his diary that he would go without eating to save money for books and things like that. And when he made Aliyah, when he came to Israel in mandatory Palestine in 1923, he brought with him already almost 2,000 books, including about 700 Kabbalistic or Hasidic books. We have in the archives his notebook where he lists them all in great detail, as a good German Yeki does very carefully. With
the scholar and philologist.
Yeah. This is actually a nice picture from 1973, which shows him studying the book, which is the earliest book we have here in the collection. It's the Rakanati on the Torah. It's from the late 15th century, so it's by all definitions incunabula, which we don't have that many that are from. We have a lot of 16th century books, so we don't have that many 15th century books.
Is that Menachem Rekanati, the Italian
Kabbalist? Yes, indeed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so
this looks like a posed photo, I have to tell you. It doesn't look like he was actually living at the time.
Yeah. And that pen, you see he's still using their fountain pen, which is perhaps one of these ones.
Oh, listen, let's check this out.
I mean, it might be this one, for example, which I think it's the same except for the tip broke off.
So this is Sholem's own writing equipment.
This is some of Sholem's writing equipment, which when I came here was just sitting out on the desk, but I decided to put it away. I see I have his inkwell here.
Wow, what a pretty piece!
And his letter weighing, so you know how much stamps to put
That's
on.
Really cool.
This is his ex libris, his sticker in books, which is in all of his books. In many of them, there's also his stamp, as you'll be able to see when we look in books. Okay, and then this bizarre piece. This is the book statue that's appointed to increase the number of books in the house of Professor Gershom Scholem of blessed memory.
Wow, all kosher. No magic going on there. No.
Yeah, it's a little, perhaps a little magical. Okay, so those are the, some of our little Scholem artifacts.
How much? Maybe this is like a question for later, but how much do you think Scholem himself was a rationalist? How much was he a mystic? If those are
he certainly claimed to be a total rationalist. Mm-hmm. He's a historian of Kabbalah, not a Kabbalist. We do know that in later editions of his biography from Berlin to Jerusalem, he admitted what he didn't write in the early editions was that as a youth he did try out the breathing techniques of Rabbi Avraham Abulafia from the late 13th century, and that they do work.
Really? That's his conclusion?
Yes.
They're efficacious.
Do help you achieve a different state of consciousness.
Right.
Okay. So back to our story. So Scholem spent his whole early part of his whole entire life really collecting books. Mm-hmm. He would correspond with his mother and ask her to send him books from Germany. Mm-hmm. She wrote him once that she had a nightmare that he was drowning in a sea of Kabbalistic manuscripts. And he wrote back and said, "Okay, Mom, that's nice, but what about the book on alchemy you're supposed to send me?" So, and the result is what we see here, which is this enormous library, which was in his apartment. When he died in 1982, he received about 25,000 books and articles, and what we're standing in the middle of here, about 4,000 plus rare books of all different kinds, which we'll look at some in a few moments.
Yeah. So from what I understand, you've kept the order that Scholem had them in his private
Exactly.
library.
So let's look at that order.
Please. I'm so excited to be doing this. You have no idea.
So what I wanted to explain then in terms of the order. Now, as I said, Scholem's library had about 25,000 books. We now have 35,000 books here because we're a real research center. We're not just a museum of Scholem.
Right.
So that means that today, basically, every third book you pull off the shelf was not Scholem's. But if you take out the books that are older, then you'll pretty much always find either or both of his sticker that we looked at before and his stamp.
Very cool.
Right? Whereas newer books that were published after 1982 are obviously not going to have. Then we don't put the stamp because we don't want to make that confusion. But still, this giant library, 2/3 of it was in his apartment.
That's really incredible. I didn't realize that such much of the ratio was actually his. Can you tell us a little about how it's both a museum and a research facility at once? That's really incredible to me.
Well, I would say the following that's important to point out. Scholem himself is a topic of great research.
Of course.
Not only as a Kabbalah scholar, but also as a political, cultural figure.
Yes.
He's very, very popular. Several biographies have come out of him in the last couple of years,
Yes.
as well as a book about his family and a book about his brother,
Right.
who we mentioned before.
Yes.
So people are also very interested in him, and part of knowing about him is knowing what was in his library.
Mm.
So it's significant to people to see what's in his library and to see his writing in his books,
Yeah.
which we should look at
Yes.
also as
yes.
well, and to see also how he arranged the books. It's part of the reason we're very careful to keep the same arrangement. There's something to be learned about why he put this book here and not somewhere else, why these books he kept together. For example, you want an example
Please,
of that?
yes,
Okay,
of
so
course.
where are the books about Sabbatianism in this library? Okay, that is
Probably
a
front and
very
center.
telling. No, luckily not front and center. But basically, after we finish the primary sources, which,
Yeah.
as I said, end with Hasidism.
Could you just say a quick one on Sabbatianism for the audience that
Yes,
might not know?
Sabbatianism is the movement of the false messiah Shabtai Tzvi, who lived in primarily in Turkey and in the land of Israel in the middle of the 17th century, and led to this giant upheaval in the Jewish world.
Mhm.
And he was a major focus of study of Scholem and his early students.
Mhm.
So after the end of the Hasidism section, then there's a big section of Kabbalistic prayer books and Hasidic prayer books, and then begins all of the materials, the research material in the same order again. But before you get to that, you have this huge section about Sabbatianism and its later offshoots, like the Frankist movement of Jacob Frank in Poland in the 18th century, and the Dunma movement of cryptic Sabbatians in Turkey,
Yes.
which continues to this day.
Yes.
Okay, and Scholem put this. Luckily, he could have put it before Hasidism
Right.
historically.
Which
He
would have
didn't.
made sense
He did
chronologically.
historically, right?
Right.
But he, and especially since he felt that Hasidism was influenced in
So-
some way, or was came to neutralize some of the messianism that broke out in the Sabbatian movement.
Yes.
But it's here as a bridge, kind of, before he goes into the regular research stuff. Okay, so beginning here, you have again the reference materials in the same order: the very early Kabbalah, and then the medieval Kabbalah, and then the Kabbalah from.
So this is secondary literature.
This is now
not-
the secondary literature.
no
This is all the
primary text.
research, and also we usually put here as well translations. You can see here in the Zohar area, for example, the tremendous amount of doctoral dissertations and master's theses that are written about this topic. Just and we put them here, and then if a book comes out, we'll replace it with the book. But there's
Nice.
always an enormous
Very
amount
cool.
of. You can see here as well. There's just an endless amount of. This is about the Kabbalah in the 16th century Sfat, Safed, of the Ari and Reb Moshe Cordoveros is also enormous amount.
I really
Same
love
thing
this because
Chassidut.
it both gives you a visual sense of how much new work is coming out, and there's something fresh and alive about this. The fact that they don't have their covers on them means that they're off the press, they're off the print, they're
Yeah, well, people like to bring their dissertations, which were often written in this room.
incredible.
They want them to be here because they want people to read them and quote
It's
them.
a
you know,
full
so-
circle. Yeah, I see a lot of my friends' work here on the shelves. It's very cool.
Yeah. This whole row almost is research about Hasidism.
Mhm.
And then after that, it becomes more universal by and large. We have here a large section about Christian Kabbalah.
Mhm.
During the Renaissance, there was a phenomenon, especially in Italy, but also in Germany, of very learned, usually clergy people, who were translating Kabbalistic works into Latin or into German, studying them, disseminating them. Some of them got into a lot of trouble with the church as well. Some of them were studying together with rabbis, especially in Italy, which was also pretty controversial. And then we begin basically rows and rows of general mysticism of other religions, Christianity primarily. That's the cultural realm that Scholem came out of course, but also Islam, Hinduism, Daoism, Buddhism, and then as well there's a lot of philosophy, a lot of history, a lot of psychology, and it ends, the last section is basically a huge section of German literature, which is including a lot of Scholem's friends like Walter Benjamin, and people who had more complex relationships with, like Hannah Arendt and Theodor Adorno, and people from the so-called Frankfurt School, who he had a very complex relationship with them, and it was all centered in a way around Walter Benjamin. But that's another big story.
מה השם שלך? רבקה, מה את חוקרת?
קמעות מהתקופה הביזנטית.
Amulets from the Byzantine period?
Yeah, from
Incredible.
late antique.
Where are you studying?
The Tel Aviv University.
That's very cool.
Because this is actually part of a scroll, of a manuscript written on a parchment that we have here in the library. This isn't even the whole thing. This is part of it. The real one is long, narrow scroll, and it basically shows the progression of the worlds and the different sphirot from a Kabbalistic perspective. These kind of spherotic charts, or as we call them today, usually Eitza Sphirot, the Kabbalistic trees, Sphirot trees, sometimes are used for study guides. This particular one was used as an amulet. If you read below, it says here, this holy tree is capable of doing all things for finding goodness and success and to avoid the evil eye, and for a woman who's having difficult childbirth and to get rid of demons and plagues. That's a good one, Magefa, okay? And all bad things in the world, and you need to put it inside of a metal or a silver container and wear it, around your neck.
Wow.
Okay, but again, the real one, this one would be hard to wear around your neck. The real one is quite tiny.
It's tiny, right?
Yeah.
There's such a fascinating juxtaposition between the ancient, the magical, the efficacious, and the scholarly, the studious, the German, the rational.
Indeed. Well, that has a lot to do with Scholem getting into this field. Okay, Scholem first got interested in Kabbalah because he read Gretz's History of the Jews, and he saw how much Gretz was so anti-Kabbalah and so against anything mystical, and made fun of it terribly as a just superstitious foolishness run by charlatans and all that stuff. And Scholem, in an extremely subversive hermeneutical move, said that he was going to take the methods of the Wissenschaft des Judentums, of the German science of Judaism, and use them to study Kabbalah the same way that the people before him had used them to study other Jewish texts, but had either ignored or attacked Kabbalah.
Fascinating. That's really fascinating. So we began with Kabbalah. Here we have Hasidut. Could you just run us through the
we have
collections
here now several rows of Hasidism, okay, which comes up to around here. Here, as I said before, both Hasidism as well as Kabbalistic prayer books, and the materials on Sabbatianism, on the Shabtai Tzvi, and later offshoots of Messianic movements. And then we begin the research material. Here we have research material on Sabbatianism, on the ancient Jewish mysticism called the Heichalot, the chambers mysticism that talk about God's palace. Hasidut Ashkenaz, the German pietists of the early medieval period. And then we get to Kabbalah of the 13th century, which includes, of course, the Zohar is the centerpiece. According to most scholars, including Scholem, after a brief hiatus as a young man, believe the Zohar was composed in Spain in the late 13th century. And then we get to Kabbalah Tzfat, the Kabbalah in Tzfat in the 16th century, which is mostly associated with the name of Rabbi Isaac Luria, the Ari. Okay, and also some Italian Kabbalah, cool. Which my teacher Moshe Idel wrote.
I love how this selection here itself tells the story of the history.
Yeah. Okay, so here we have after the conclusion of the Kabbalah in Italy, seemingly extremely out of place, we have all the research material on Rav Avram Yitzchak Cohen Cook, the first chief rabbi, Ashkenazi chief rabbi of modern Palestine, and his students. This is here because in the source material, Scholem put Rav Cook's books next to those of the other 20th century Kabbalists in Jerusalem. Before Hasidism, it's kind of an aberration, but then that's why these books are here out of place chronologically. After we have all the research on Hasidism, and then now we have here the Christian Kabbalah and Christianity.
Yes, Christian mysticism.
More Christianity. We have more research on Kabbalah, which is, in my mind, also sort of out of place, but it's too hard to change. Philosophy, Musar, Jewish ethics, Jewish Kabbalistic philosophy. Okay, so in psychology here, so you have a lot of both Freud, who Scholem didn't really like his psychoanalysis, and Jung, who Scholem was much closer to his archetypical perspective and mythological perspective on psychology. Okay, so after psychology, and then we have here a Kabbalah from the 20th century, and again, more Kabbalist research on Kabbalah. And then we have a big section on Gnosticism. Scholem believed that Kabbalah was a kind of Jewish Gnosticism, which is a position very much criticized by Edel and others. So you have here a very large section of books from and about Gnosticism. And then other Christian sects, the Cathars, okay, and ancient magic like the Hermetic magic. And that continues here to alchemy, astrology, myth, magic, okay, and then we get to Eastern religions. We have Muslim, Sufism, basically, and then that continues right after that with Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Hinduism, other Confucius, Daoism, really. And then for some reason we get back into a Jewish area, and we have books pertaining to tefillah, Jewish philosophy, Jewish rituals.
Somehow everything here is couched and surrounded by its Jewish context.
Yeah, or some people might say everything's surrounded in some way by Christian context. It sort of depends on what you look at as the inside and the outside.
Sure.
Okay, here we have a nice collection of not of rabbinic literature, but not so much on the legal side, more on the midrashic side. There's a very good collection of midrashim and rabbinic lore, let's say, or books about the Bible and interpretations of the Bible. We have here also a lot of books about the Apocrypha, the Dead Sea Scrolls, and ancient Christianity. These things that he saw as things which perhaps were influential on later Jewish mysticism as well.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Okay, and we have reference works. We have more rabbinic literature, the Talmud, the Mishnah, some works of Jewish law, very little bit, different editions of the Bible. Okay, and then there's a very big sections of Jubilee books in honor or in memory of people that often are filled with very, very important essays and articles of all sorts. We have a big section here of Jewish history and also about Jewish communities around the world that interested Scholem. So there's a lot of books about specific Jewish communities. Okay, we have about medieval Jewish Hebrew poetry in Spain. And then we have a section of German literature, which includes big sections on Kafka and Walter Benjamin,
who was a friend of Scholem.
Who was a very close friend and a big influence on Scholem. And then we end with more reference works, encyclopedia, dictionaries, collections of periodicals. There's also here a lot of books by Martin Buber, who was an influence and a kind of a partner, a disagreement partner. Say Barplukta in English. Interlocutor, something like that, with Scholem for many, many years, and a lot of books by Agnon, the Hebrew author, who was a very close friend of Scholem. It pretty much ties it up in terms of what's here. A lot.
Is this Goethe?
Yes.
Goethe and Agnon. Yeah. Very cool. It's really cool to get in Scholem's mind via his books. I feel a sense of intimacy here with him, particularly when you see his handwriting in the margins.
So we can look at some.
Yeah, please. Let's see that.
We can do that. Let's look at some rare books now. Okay, off to see a few rare books. I want to pull out one more before we...
The old and the new that come together in this room is really incredible. Maybe while we're pulling out some books, can you tell us a bit about who the people that come to use this room are?
Oh, yeah, that's very important. This room is a multicultural center where you have together Israeli and worldwide academics who would claim to be completely secular, with Hasidic or Kabbalistic Jews from Mea Shearim, from the most religious neighborhood in Jerusalem, with long peyot, long earlocks and long beards. And not only do they sit together in the same room, but they really work together. You really, on a daily basis, see interactions between so-called ultra-Orthodox Jews and secular Jews or non-Jewish scholars who also come here, men and women. We've had scholars come here from all over the world, especially in the summer when there's not corona. We're packed with scholars from all over Europe, the States, the Far East even.
Wow.
And this is an amazing meeting place where you see all aspects of Israeli society and beyond working together in real harmony and helping each other. It's very, very special.
That's really cool. That's very, very cool. What's your name?
My name is Josephine Scholem. I go by Shia.
Where are you from?
Los Angeles.
Nice. I lived in LA for a year.
Oh yeah.
What brings you to the library?
I love the Gershom Scholem library over here. Hasidism, Kabbalah. The particular book I'm reading now is a book by Rav Moshe Schatz about the unity of Kabbalah and science, explaining how quantum theory and the theory of relativity correlates with Kabbalah, specifically the Ari and the Rashash, and what they call the parts of. It's a fascinating book.
This is one of my favorites. This is a really beautiful classic rare book, old book, Sefer Yetzirah from Mantoba in Italy from 1562.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
It's gorgeous. They used good paper in those days. What's special in this one is that you have Kabbalistic charts of, permutations of divine names, which is standard in Kabbalistic books. It's not so unusual, but what's special here is that you have also do-it-yourself kits of
Wheels.
2 levels
That's
that you
very
can do the permutations
That's very
yourself, and even some with 3 levels.
Oh, that's amazing.
Okay, so this is pretty cool. There's actually is another copy of this book.
It almost looks like a minute and hour hand over here.
Yeah, but it's two of God's most prominent names.
Mm-hmm. That's very cool.
That's very, very cool.
I've never seen that in a book published today. So that's when I was in kindergarten. We had interactive books.
Yeah. Some of Scholem's books are rare because of the amount of notes in them. This is his copy of the Zohar Hadash, part of the Zoharic literature from Warsaw from 1884, which is not at all a rare book, but this is an example of Scholem's methodology that when he didn't have enough room in the margins to write, he would literally have his books rebound with a blank page next to every page of text. So this is, obviously this is the only copy in the world that's anything like this.
Sure, yeah. I've heard that he's written some wild things in some of his margins.
Yeah, he's written sometimes pretty unpleasant criticism of people. There's one book that he wrote on it. What a shame about for this beautiful paper.
A waste of fine paper.
Yeah, a waste of fine paper. There's another book that someone wrote to him, a dedication, said, to my teacher or something, and he wrote next to that, woe to the teacher that this is his student. So yeah, he has sometimes some unpleasant comments to make.
He has a sharp tongue.
He definitely was a sharp in that sense. Okay, a couple of my favorites.
Please.
This is Sefer Tzikaret Tzaddik of the famous Hasidic Rebbe, Rabbi Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, who died in 1900. This is one of his earlier books from the 1840s, Tzikaret Tzaddik, that was published in 1902 in Lublin. All of his books were published posthumously by his students. This book underwent internal censorship, meaning that the students left out sections. For example, here you see chapter 53. Here's chapter 55, and here it says chapter 54 is missing. Okay, there are about 10 things left out like that they were deemed as being too radical to put in. In the 60s, they began to be publishing the missing parts. So where did those missing parts come from? So I'd like to say they came from this, which is not exactly true, but it's pretty close. What we have here in the back is a manuscript.
Wow.
The sections left out of the holy book Tzikaret Tzaddik that were left out in the printed edition were one of his Hasidim copied for himself the parts that had been left out of the book, presumably from the original manuscript of Rav Tzadok himself.
That's epic.
Okay, this section. So there's another copy like this, where the editions are around the sides, not in the back, and that's the one from which they published the editions. Although this piece, Kuf Samach Bet 162, was not in that one, and it was later published just from here by itself.
Very
okay?
cool.
There's one section that's still missing in all the editions, so if you find it, please be in touch with us, and we'll
Which one
have
is it?
quite a scoop. I think it's 64.
That's very cool. I like how they've done this little calligraphic.
Yeah, I don't know if
pictographic
it's 64. Maybe it's 74. I think it's iron dollar. Yeah. Yeah, I believe the missing one that we still don't have is chapter 74. If anyone finds it, it'd be a great scoop.
Chapter 74 on Tzidkas Tzadik, Tzadik Kohen Lublin. Whoever finds it gets a free lunch date with Rabbi Dr. Tzvi
Yeah,
Leshem.
okay.
You heard it here first. That's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. I feel like we spent an hour with Scholem. It was really,
Well, I hope he's happy. You know? I hope I felt that I represented him
I'm sure.
properly.
I'm sure. Did you ever meet Gershom?
I did not meet him, but I did hear him speak once, and that could also be part of a story of a book if you want.
For sure.
Okay, so I did not ever meet Scholem, but I heard him speak once, one of his last talks in public probably, in 1980, I believe. He spoke to a group of religious university students at a place called Beit Meir. And when he was there, he was asked about Rav Kook, and he talked about how he admired him, and then he told the following funny story, that Rav Kook, at least this is what I remember him saying, although it's recorded, and it's actually on the website in my article is a link to the recording, that he said that that Rav Kook's very mystical tract on the Hebrew letters, Reish Milin, that he wrote in London during World War I, that Scholem said that he had excellent testimony from reliable witnesses that Rav Kook had said that he no longer remembered what he wrote in that book, even though he understood it when he wrote it. Yes. This is Rav Kook's edition of Reish Milin, of the first edition from London. And he wrote next to the title page, regarding this book, the author told my friend Shaul Lieberman, the very, very great Talmudic scholar of the 20th century, who was very close to both Rav Kook and to Scholem. A little bit before he died, and it was a little bit before Rav Kook's death, he told Rabbi Lieberman, when he gave him a copy of this, that he no longer understands any word that he wrote here, even though he understood it at the time that he wrote it. This I heard from him, from Rabbi Lieberman, in 1966. Okay? Later, a friend of mine told me that they owned the copy that Rabbi Lieberman got from Rav Kook, and this is a copy of that it was sent to me. If you're interested, this is not in our library. This is in a private library of a friend of mine. That this is the dedication from Rav Kook to Rabbi Lieberman. And a lot's been written about that comment. What did he really mean by that? We'll leave that for another time, or you can read my article on the library website.
That's a good pitch.
That's the only time that I heard Scholem speak, was when he, amongst other things, told this story of this book.
I'm sure there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of more stories between these books, between these folios. But you're a busy man, and we have to let you go back to your life.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us in this tour. Is there any final words to the camera? An invitation?
I would invite anyone who's interested in Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, Hasidism, Messianism, or general mysticism to come to the Scholem Library. We have here I won't be able to spend as much time with you as I have with Zevi today, but I can certainly help you find the kind of books that you're looking for to further your studies. We'd love to have you visit.
And you'll find the best librarian that the world has to offer.
Okay. We're open Sunday through Thursday from 9 to 4.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun. I agree. Okay.
Yeah.
Chaverim, הספרייה נסגרת.
Thank you so much, Sue.
It was a lot of fun.
Looking forward to seeing you soon.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you.